Pile Dropper here to break down some more football. We've got the Monday Night Football game between the Chiefs and the Raiders tonight. While you come in, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a comment below to let me know whatever your thoughts are on for the game tonight. Any bets you like, any bets you dislike, who you picking to win the game. I'm picking the Chiefs to win. I don't have a specific bet on the money line or the spread, and nothing really too out of the box there. But if anybody thinks the Raiders win this game or maybe just cover the spread, let me know below in the description box. Maybe there's something that you guys really feel strongly about with the Raiders that I'm missing. But Chiefs are who I'm picking to win the game, and that will inform some of the prop bets that I'm placing for this game as well. Also, a recap from this weekend's games, and it was another pretty strong betting week. So for the bets I had yesterday, I had 7 across the main slate and the Sunday Night Football game. Ended up going 4-3 on those bets. On the main slate, the prop bets that I won: Devin Singletary under 53.5 rushing yards, Rondale Moore over 3.5 receptions, Saquon Barkley under 81.5 rushing yards. All 3 of those won pretty easily. And then I had one bad loss. That was Christian Kirk over 66.5 receiving yards. So went 3-1 for the main slate. And then on to the Sunday night game, I picked the Ravens to win. They did win, but I had them minus 3.5. And unfortunately, they won by 2, didn't cover the spread. And then something that was also related to that, I had J.K. Dobbins over rushing yards, which looked nearly a lock for most of the game. And then he just didn't really play in the fourth quarter. And it was Kenyon Drake who was in it running back towards the tail end of that game. So Dobbins was efficient running the football, but ultimately didn't get the carries I thought he was going to. So that one ended up losing. And then one other winning bet I had from last night was Hayden Hurst over 2.5 receptions. So just being transparent about all my bets for yesterday's slate, 4-3. So overall feel good whenever there's more wins than losses on some of those. And also a couple of those bets were also plus money bets on the prop. So that's the recap from yesterday. Now it's time to break down Monday Night Football. These are my best prop bets for tonight's game between the Chiefs and the Raiders. The first bet I'm looking at is under 50.5 receiving yards for Darren Waller. And on paper, this would seem like a good spot for Darren Waller just because it's a matchup against the Chiefs where you would just figure the Raiders have to throw the ball a lot in order to keep up with Kansas City. We've seen a number of games over the last few years where it's been Raiders-Chiefs games, and there have just been back and forth, lots of passing between Patrick Mahomes and Derek Carr. But when it's come to Darren Waller this year, he just hasn't been involved in the offense in quite the same way as previous years. And I think it's pretty obvious as to why. Davante Adams is in the mix. It's another guy in there who's going to soak up a ton of targets. And that's just overall slightly minimized the role of Darren Waller. It's not to say he's not still a target that Derek Carr looks at, but look at the last couple of weeks. We're in each of them 3 receptions on 5 targets for Waller, 24 and 22 receiving yards in each of those games. So in the last 2 weeks combined, he has 46 receiving yards, and overall for the season, he's only had 1 game where he's gone for over 50.5 receiving yards, and that was the first game of the season against the Chargers. And I think we could use some logic there to say, well, maybe Derek Carr and Davante Adams just didn't quite have the same chemistry yet with the Raiders that he had with Darren Waller in previous years. So he was a little more willing to throw to Darren Waller a little more in week 1. So for today, I'm going to be looking at Darren Waller under 50.5 receiving yards. It's just based on his results so far this year. I think the number's a little bit too high in our projections. We have Waller projected for 40.9 receiving yards and the under projected to win 69% of the time. So first bet of the night, Darren Waller under 50.5 receiving yards. The next bet I'm looking at is over 279.5 passing yards for Patrick Mahomes. And just a quick note here is that there are some different books that are offering different numbers with different juice on Patrick Mahomes. So just make sure that you're getting the book or you're betting this at whatever the best odds possible at the time you're placing the bet. Today's show is sponsored by DraftKings Sportsbook. And if that's a book you haven't signed up yet, they've got a really good deal going on right now. You place a $5 bet on any money line. If that team wins, you get $200. So the best way to take advantage is just bet one of those massive college football money line favorites. And it's the equivalent of like a free $200 on a $5 bet, because while there's a slight chance that one of those teams loses, it's pretty improbable, like minus 2,000, minus 3,000 on the money line. But talking about Patrick Mahomes and his passing yardage for this game, I really like the matchup against the Raiders. And oh, by the way, one other thing that's kind of funny is I have the numbers in front of me, and I was about to reference the Raiders' passing defense as being one of the worst in the league, which is true. They're 24th in DVOA, but I didn't see them on the chart in front of me for a second because I was looking for Oakland instead of Las Vegas. Something about getting older. I still kind of correlate teams playing with whatever old cities they were in. And then same thing, I was talking about a football game the other day, and I had accidentally said Russell Wilson mentioned it being on the Seahawks instead of the Broncos. You get old and you just kind of remember teams or players being in certain places. But Raiders. Las Vegas, not Oakland, 24th in pass defense DVOA. So one of the worst pass defenses in all of the NFL to open the year. That's always going to be a good situation for Patrick Mahomes. We're putting him in a primetime game against this Raiders pass defense. Against the run, they're about above average, but this already, it's more of a pass-heavy team in the Kansas City Chiefs than is a run team as is. Now, I do understand that through 4 games this year, Patrick Mahomes has hit the under on his passing yardage in 3 out of 4 games. But with that said, we have seen some spots where the Raiders have played in games, or where we've seen the Chiefs play in games that have been really lopsided, where they haven't had to throw the ball as much in the fourth quarter. So, for instance, the Week 1 win against the Cardinals, that was a game that we saw Patrick Mahomes hit the over. Last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the final score may have only been 10 points, but it was really much wider than that and not really in doubt for much of the game. And Mahomes just didn't have to throw the ball all that much in the fourth quarter. Had he had to throw the ball, he probably would have been somewhere around 300 plus passing yards in that game. And for the spot against the Raiders, I do think this is a pretty favorable spot for Mahomes to rack up passing yards, something we've seen him do numerous times against the Raiders in the past, and especially on some of these primetime games. And the other thing, too, when it comes to the Chiefs is even though they don't have Tyreek Hill in the passing game anymore, they still have so many weapons.
I did. There's a weird countdown clock on there now. Hopefully I get rid of that. All right, we're going to be all right. All right, resetting this link, and we should be okay in theory. Apologize. I'm going to put 2 minutes on the countdown just so people ain't sitting there with a 0, but I think we're good. All right, I'm going to put your mics hot in about 20 seconds. Fixing this, and I think we should be good to go. 2-person screen share is updated as well. All right. This thing's acting a fool today. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I couldn't. I was struggling with Eric earlier. We rebooted everything, trying to figure out a way to get this to go, and it's doing it again. Jesus Christ. All right, that works.
Okay. Okay. I didn't hear anything. I don't know if we were supposed to or not. All right, welcome in. It's a Friday, so you made it throughout the week, and as you know, Friday. What am I talking about? It's a
Monday, man.
Geez. The last two times you and I have got together, Geoff, I have yet, this is now 3 straight shows where I have yet to get through the damn introduction without screwing something up. I can't even get the day right. Here I am thinking yeah, it's Friday. Congratulations, everybody. You made it. And it's fucking Monday. Welcome to the NHA show. We appreciate you. And yes, Geoff is here to get you ready along with our projections on site, which are free for No House Advantage, our optimal lineups as well. But Geoff is here. Mike's producing. I'm here. I'm just trying not to get in the way at this point, man.
You got my hopes up for a sec. I blacked out. I'm like, wait a sec. Is it Friday? Do I get it? This is the weekend already?
Right. Jeez. I feel terrible.
Was I like Adam Sandler in that movie Go? And I just fast forwarded through the week.
Yes, right.
Oh man, no. It's Monday Night Football. It's okay. Yeah, we're here. Chiefs, Raiders. We're good.
Now, are you excited for this football game? A lot of action as far as heavy total here. Some big names on both sides of the football. So what's Geoff think about this game tonight?
Yeah, no, I mean, these two teams put up points. So, I mean, it feels like it should be a wide open game. I mean, you got the Raiders defense. It doesn't bring much pressure, kind of wide open. You should be seeing the Chiefs move the ball pretty easily. And then you've got a Chiefs defense who I think is still a defense who's just a little bit overrated. They've allowed some big garbage time points, yards as well. So I'm looking for some big plays. I'm looking for Devontae Adams, Travis Kelce to really come play. And I think this will be a closer game. I'm expecting the Chiefs to win out, but I kind of like the Raiders to cover as well. So with all that, yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to this one. And I think should be more exciting than the last Monday night game. So.
Yeah, and when you say the Raiders to cover, a couple of different ways, and we'll get there as far as individually, right? When we look at guys and, kind of what jumps out here from individual plays. But is this because the total is super high, as you would expect with Mahomes and even that Raiders offense, what it could be capable with Adams on the other side of it. But it's a high total. We get it. And you mentioned the Chiefs defense giving up some late points. Do you think this stays low? Do you think the Raiders are able to keep Josh Jacobs and the football on the ground and maybe methodically move through to the point where all of a sudden, Patrick Mahomes isn't on the field for as long as we think? Because I don't know if you can shoot out the Chiefs, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think you just laid out the path to victory for the Raiders where, maybe they get Chandler Jones going, they get pressure on Mahomes, they keep him off the field. And then Josh Jacobs takes over this game and Derek Carr only has to throw 28 times.
Yeah.
That's the path to victory. If Derek Carr has to drop back 40 times, it's probably a really exciting game and the Raiders lose. But, I think Josh Jacobs has looked good. I mean, he's kind of playing that contract right now. He's in a different system this year. The head coach it's to a point where he has really no choice but to trust him. So, yeah, that's definitely a scenario you play for. And I mean, we can start with Josh Jacobs. We do have him projected for an under at 70.5 on No House, but again, you want to style your lineups to how you think the game's going to go. The contrarian build here is that the Raiders control the game on the ground,
right?
And the Chiefs just don't have the ball that much. We get a lower scoring game. So starting with the Josh Jacobs over, you've got to kind of correlate that to, I think you'll probably see lower passing numbers for the Chiefs and just less possession time. So, you could maybe look to the Mahomes under to pair that with, and maybe put those two in a higher up point spot as well, because I don't think many people, even at 300 yards, we have Mahomes projected as a strong under. And I think there's a lot of scenarios where he does go under, but you can play him high up. Some people may not be as bullish on him to put him in a 7 or 8 spot with an under there too. So right off the bat, if you're playing for that kind of scenario where you're taking Jacobs over, you've got to think, what does that mean on the other side? I think that probably means Mahomes doesn't have the ball that much. So
yeah, you're right. I think that's a good correlation to how often, or in this case, not often, Mahomes has the football. And then just looking at everything, I mean, look, we've got Jerick McKinnon and Darren Waller prop we can start with at the top as far as how strong Alex feels on our projections on site for unders, the only two that are in the 70+ percentile. But this game has under as far as itself written all over. I mean, just based on our own projections, right, Geoff? Everything is under. Rushing yards, receiving yards, reception. The over, the first over that you find that we have strongly projected is Derek Carr throwing a pick. So it's not even like touchdowns or something along those lines. The only other thing you could find is Mecole Hardman, kind of a lesser option guy, just sneaking by his over. So a lot of this, pardon me, Hunter Renfrow comes in with just over his receiving yards as well. But everything else, I don't know if you look at something like this, because this won't be the first time, especially for one game. And you think, wow, Alex and our site, we have so many things correlated to the under. Maybe this correlates to an under game.
I mean, the prime times have been trending that way just in general, right? And I mean, again, like the Chiefs, we talk about Josh Jacobs, but like the Chiefs have been running the ball a little bit more this year too. They're about league average in terms of rush attempts. So, I mean, again, like, is it good? Could it be an exciting game? Absolutely. Could Derek Carr drop back like 40 times? Yeah, but there's also a scenario where Clyde Edwards-Helaire runs like 19 times. Like Derek Carr just doesn't have the ball that much. So a lot of ways like to play it basically. And you know, again, you start off with like our top projections here. You know, Jerick McKinnon, he's taken 4 or less rushes in 3 of the 4 games. He's only had 1 game with more than 4 rushes this year. We have him as the strongest projected play at under 20.5 rush yards. I love it. Pacheco getting mixed in as well, looking great. I think Andy Reid's confidence there is growing. McKinnon just doesn't have it as the rusher right now. I think he'll still get worked in a bit on passing downs and maybe at the goal line, but those big chunk plays are not going to come. And there's definitely a scenario where he gets like 3 rushes, maybe even doesn't even get a rush just because of the way Pacheco's playing. So I love that under to start out with. It's projected as our strongest play on the board.
Yep.
And then right underneath him, Darren Waller, you mentioned Hunter Renfrow. You know, with Renfrow back, I mean, like he out-targeted Devontae Adams in week 2. He went for 20 catches against the Chiefs last season in 2 regular season games. He is projected as our strongest over. And I think that correlates well with the Darren Waller under. I mean, 55 receiving yards with Waller right now. He's not really the player that he was a couple of years ago, quite frankly. I think injuries, I mean, people forget, like Darren Waller's like 30. Like he's not, right. I just don't think he's that explosive anymore. I think like injuries have unfortunately maybe just caught up with him a little bit too early, but he just doesn't look the same as he did like 2 or 3 years ago to me. So I like the under there, and I like the over on Renfrow as well.
Yeah, and just going back to these 3 real quick, and Renfrow we can come to Renfrow in a second, but normally when we look at guys up at the top, there is a somewhat of a strong argument, if not maybe a stronger argument, for a contrarian play here. And while you can, if you're running multiple lineups and clearly take advantage of that on NHA, by all means, but if you were just looking at, well, yeah, Jerick McKinnon, it makes sense as you lay that out there. I don't think there's an easy contrarian play for either one of these guys where something may be a little off or something is just a little bit of a leap here or something is just factored into a projection that you and I don't necessarily agree with on site. I don't really see any of that. Like, I don't know how much of a risk it is for you to play overs on either McKinnon or Waller in that situation because of the argument you laid out for both.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't even, again, like the only way I would go on McKinnon is maybe look at taking over receiving yards, but otherwise just kind of a player I want to fade. Yeah. Waller, I really want nothing to do with
at all.
Yeah. Okay. Like I said, I just feel like with Adams there and now Renfrow back, I mean, you know, maybe he gets there reception wise, but the big plays have not been there for Darren Waller. So I'm not going to expect them to come alive tonight. Yeah. So I mean, you go down, like if I'm going to be a contrarian play here and take an over on a big total for Raiders, it's going to be Devontae Adams. Like 90.5 receiving yards. It's a big number. It's way bigger than the books have. But you know what? Like, I do not mind going there. If you're playing for the shootout route where these 2 teams again combine to go over in 55 points, and we do get 40 dropbacks from Derek Carr, Davante Adams is going over. I mean, give me a break. Like, the Raiders or the Chiefs, have struggled with big receivers on the outside already. Evans, Mike Williams, both going for 100 yards and a touchdown. I do think there's a good chance you're going to see Davante Adams have a big night. So, again, we have this projected as an underplay, but we're talking about contrarian builds and who do you want to rely on maybe to go against the field? To me, that's Adams for sure. And, again, you can correlate that so many different ways. Take the car over on interceptions. If he's dropping back 40 times, he's probably going to throw a pick. Take the car over on passing yards as well, and pair that up with Davante Adams. Actually, do we have a passing yard prop for Derek Carr? I think we only have passing touchdowns. So.
Passing touchdowns, interceptions.
We must have one, do we?
Yeah.
No, we don't.
No, he's not.
Passing yards. No, we do. 270. Thank you.
There you go.
Voice of God stepping in. Yeah. So like, I think we could, I think you could do that as well. So.
Okay. Look, I think that works, honestly. And I think going against it. Now, what about Mahomes? He's under at 2.5. Like you laid it out there with Carr, especially right for him throwing 40 times. That's a reasonable expectation if they're down, especially if they're going, if this game's going over and the Raiders are down, we can surely anticipate a ton of throws. What about Mahomes? Do you like where we are here on site with Mahomes? Is there anything else? And again, there's nothing that's glaring here. The highest rated we have for Mahomes is really just 56%, but it's a narrow under 2.5 for his touchdowns.
So, I mean, again, like we're talking different ways to play this. And I laid out like the argument for the Raiders, but I'm kind of in agreement with what you suggested at the start. Like this, like leaning with the projections and leaning towards the underplays here is I still think stronger. Like I like all the unders on Mahomes tonight. Yeah. I mean, under touchdowns, under yards. I think there's a lot of scenarios where he gets there. Either the Raiders control the ball, keep him off the field, or the Chiefs run the ball more and just play more of a change of pace game. Juju Smith-Schuster's banged up. Like what are we relying on here? MVS to like take over this game? I mean, like I just don't think that the Chiefs are going to move the ball that fast. So with that in mind, like this game all of a sudden becomes shorter. We have less snaps from Mahomes in that scenario. And they've run the ball well. And like Pacheco at the goal line maybe gets more usage. Like the passing touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns for a game that we're playing for maybe like one of the teams to be running the ball quite a bit. That's a lot. So yeah. I do like the under scenario there. Again, I think that I'm definitely would be, the yards on the Raiders intrigues me to go over, but that's only one scenario. There's a lot of scenarios where a lot of those guys go under too. So but Mahomes wise, I don't really want to like be different with this Chiefs offense tonight. I mean, I just don't know where the yards are necessarily going to come from. Maybe we get like a Marquez Valdez-Scantling, like the one game a year where he goes for 100 yards. But other than that, man, I mean, I think the Chiefs are going to be a little bit more like not check downish, but just conservative, run the ball and try and let their defense just get to Derek Carr. Yeah.
So here's the thing. And you talked a little bit about the backfield with McKinnon at the start there, but Edwards-Helaire, I'm with you on what you just laid out. And based on your sentences right there, as far as, looking at the game, especially from the Chiefs wide receiver standpoint, I'm a little surprised. Now, look, it's tight, right? 50.5 to 45.5 is the line versus our projection, respectively. But it's still a 67% slam under for Edwards-Helaire. I would just think everything that you've laid out and how we both see this game would correlate to maybe a higher rushing total for Edwards-Helaire. But again, they're factors. It could be somebody else in the backfield. It could just be game flow. Like there are other things there, but that was something that I was a little surprised at. That's all.
Yeah. And I feel like that projection is likely like combo of a couple things. He had like 0 yards rushing against Tampa Bay. And then also the snap count, with Edwards-Helaire, just, it kind of fluctuates. So I feel like that's more than anything, but we're still within like 5 yards of our prop here. And it's definitely close enough to me to say that, we've seen him go over this a couple times easily this season. Is he going to be like a player who ever gets like a big prop, like a big projection for us? I don't think so, unless the snap count really changes, but still a player who's shown like really good just potential in terms of like those spikes. And just if he's effective early in the game, I mean, like he could get there on a couple drives, it feels like. So yeah, I think with all that being considered, Chiefs big favorite, like over a touchdown favorite. You got to I do like being a little bit contrarian there and going over on that.
Is there anything else we start to look around here? It's tight, man. And like this has defense and kicker written all over it in Showdown, right?
It kind of does, and it's weird to say that, but like I'm a little bit with you. I mean, I talked about this total this morning, and you know we bring up the history, and it's hard to be like bearish on it. But the more I think about this game, like I kind of see like a maybe a 27-20 max, maybe even like lower score than that. So I'll throw out Marquez Valdes-Scantling at 3.5 receptions. I do think that's an interesting over target as well. Again, Juju Smith-Schuster, like in week injuries are never a good sign. And he got injured on Saturday. So, it's just a hamstring tweak and it doesn't sound like that big a deal, but the Chiefs were already rotating wide receivers, and it doesn't take much for like Valdes-Scantling to all of a sudden just pop up to like a 70% or 80% snap rate.
Yep.
Just because Juju is limited. And yeah. I think that again, we're looking for plays. It's a tight game. We've got a lot of tight props. That's one I don't mind going over on. We basically have MVS projected for his total at 3.5. So it's not a strong lean in either direction. But with the injury news factored in, like I look at that as a play to go over on instead. Not really a player I'd love going over on, but like I'll do it just because of the injury news we're getting. And then like across the board again, like we've just got a lot of tight props down at the bottom. I think Renfro is still just a good over target across the board. Derek Carr just loves Hunter Renfro. I think even in scenarios where this game is lower scoring, Carr probably just hits him for like, 8 or 9 targets, just because at some point, they're going to be in the hurry up offense. And I think there's not many scenarios where the Raiders are like a touchdown ahead late in the game and they're just salting the game away and we don't get there. So I'm still pretty bullish on Renfro as well.
By the way, I'm riding a 2-leg here. I did it with the Buffalo game. I also did it here with the Kansas City. 3 unanswered scores. Now, all I need is that in the game, but I feel like, one team could get on a roll here, and it's probably going to be low scoring, but could definitely see that taking off. And I think to that point where you were talking about receptions for MVS, I think that's the easiest / best, and maybe easiest is the wrong term to lead with, but maybe the most effective way to attack the passing game here from an over standpoint, because you probably won't see heavy passing numbers like receiving and passing yards, but especially if guys are struggling to move the football on the ground, quick passes, quick throws, establishing guys like Devontae Adams, Travis Kelce, right? Like establishing top players with the football early. You may see that. So maybe those 2 guys from a reception standpoint, even Mecole Hardman, we have, targeted going over there.
Yeah. Yeah. Hardman is interesting. I really thought Mecole Hardman would be just a bigger part than he has, just because he's been there for so long, but he's really just kind of had the same, if not like less of a role in this offense. But this is definitely a spot where he could get going. I mean, I think that you will see weeks from him where he goes for like 5 or 6 catches and potentially like is their leading receiver. So this, and again, like Smith-Schuster banged up. So yeah, we do have that projected as over. And I mean, again, like you look at his game card, what he's done, but you gotta factor in some game flow and stuff like that from the last few contests. They were up pretty early against Tampa and really running the ball well. So not too shocked there that he didn't get like a lot of looks, but a little bit more open tonight. I think this is definitely a spot where Hardman, again, like it's a low total, but we're getting there. We're just asking receptions. We don't need like big plays. We don't need him to go for like 100 yards. 3 receptions with one of their receivers banged up. Yeah, I think that's very plausible.
All right, where else are you looking at? I mean, again, there aren't that many names, it feels like, right? Like normally, maybe I'm wrong here, but I feel like we have more names to choose from overall.
Yeah, we do. But I think a lot of these props are just like, they're very, like it feels like flipping a coin with a lot of these guys tonight. A lot of the times we're either like taking contrarian routes on no house because of their higher prop totals, or it's just like we have a very strong lean one way or the other. We've talked about the guys we have strong leans with, but there's a long list of players like we just went over Hardman and MVS. Those guys are kind of, you could lean under on MVS and that'd be fine too. I mean, like we haven't projected for 3.4, his prop is 3.5. So Kelsey even is like, basically a neutral projection for us. So, how you deal up the bottom end of your tickets or your lineups in the pick'em contest tonight, it's kind of just how you're reading the tea leaves or just how you're constructing lineups. The one player I'll definitely, stand for here is Renfro. That's a player I'd be fine high up in the lineups. But as far as like your bottom, like your 5 through 1 props in the pick'em contest, like, maybe getting different with like a Derek Carr over passing touchdowns is something you could be interested in. We do have him actually projected for over 1.5. So that's something to think about. But, you can fade Valdez-Scantling from a yardage perspective too. Maybe you fade MVS and go over on Hardman. Like, I think that's realistically one way to look at it too. I think whatever you're doing down here with these like less popular props, you just want to kind of make sure you're correlating them. Like I wouldn't want to go over on Hardman and MVS.
Right.
So going like over one, under the other probably makes sense. You got a Mahomes pick.
Yeah, I was looking at that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's interesting. Again, like
worth. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say like one of the receivers banged up, maybe doesn't have his like most reliable wide receiver. I think it's more that's fine.
Yeah. Both of these are tight, right? Mahomes and interceptions, Kelsey's receptions. Is there leverage or is there any value in going contrarian on either or both of those and simply just going under? Like Mahomes does not throw a pick tonight and Kelsey goes over the 6.5 and grabs 7 balls, which again, I don't think he needs to have 150 yards and 2 touchdowns to have 7 receptions.
Yeah. And I mean, going through your head, like Travis Kelsey, I think if he goes under this prop, he's probably getting 6. Like it's going to be close.
Yeah.
You're probably not going to like cruise home with like 3 receptions. It happens very rarely, like once a season with Kelsey, especially now, especially against the Raiders, by the way, who his averages against the Raiders is pretty sick. So
it's insane.
Yeah. It's not really a spot I'd want to go under. I'd probably rather go under on, well, actually what is his yardage? 80 yards. Yeah. Maybe go under. You could think about going under on the yardage or something like that rather than the receptions. But yeah, I think that's realistic where, you're playing the under on Mahomes interceptions and then you're playing over on Kelsey receptions and playing for more of like a Chiefs dominant victory where their star players just kind of taking over the game. Makes a lot of sense. You come back with like the Renfro overs, maybe some yardage totals on the Raiders as well. So a lot of different ways to play this one. I mean, this is more props than we usually have for a single game. And then also, again, lots of just close calls. So interesting game shaping up here for No House. And I think we've covered most of the players.
I was going to say, yeah.
Again, like the strongest plays for me still remain, McKinnon, like the under Waller. And then again, like you can take strong stances. The one thing I like is you can take strong stances with either Devontae Adams or Josh Jacobs. So, again, like you're playing the Derek Carr over passing props, sure, take Josh Jacobs under, but if you're taking Jacobs over, I mean, make sure you're mixing in like a Derek Carr under as well, because those two correlate pretty strongly, I think.
Real quick on the way out here, we talked briefly, you brought up Juju's injury and he's pegged for overs. I'm a little surprised at that. I thought that would be a safe under 4.5 grabs and 55.5 receiving yards. Well, I guess granted the receiving yards is pretty much a coin flip to what you were talking about earlier, but at least receptions, I know that's tight as far as our projection is concerned. It's pretty much on the money, but still I'm surprised that it's not at like 3 receptions or 2.5 receptions.
Yeah, no. And that's it's a good point. Cause like if he plays, I mean, again, like he got nicked up on Saturday. I definitely like the under on receptions. I would rather play that than the under on yards. He could just go out there and rip off like a 35-yarder against the Raiders and get there on like 3 catches. So, especially if it's like, there's like a late game, we're in a late game catch up scenario. So the under on receptions, though, I like that play a lot. I know we have it projected as neutral, but you got to factor in the injury stuff. The fact he's been rotating, like he's not an every down wide receiver.
Right.
He's basically been rotating with like MVS. I know his target share is a little bit bigger, but like 5 catches we're asking a lot here for a team that could be running the ball a lot, likes to spread it out.
Awesome, brother. Anything else that mean, you nailed it. We hit everything on this
Yeah.
one game slate here tonight for NHA.
No, I mean, I like the fact we're leaning over on Hardman. I like the fact we're leaning over on Renfro. Like, I feel good about those plays. I think you'll see a little bit more Mecole Hardman tonight. That's not shocking. And then, like I said, at the top, it's really just, do you want to play this game for the running backs controlling it, or do you want to play for a little bit more of a shootout? And, that's kind of up to you how you construct your lineups. Again, just making sure you're correlating with what makes sense.
Okay. Awesome. Appreciate everybody rolling with us. As always, hit the thumbs up button. Make sure you're subscribed here. We do this a couple of times a week. We get you ready for Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, and then the weekend slate on Friday. So we'll see you on Thursday again here on the NHA Football Show. Thanks to Mike for producing. Thanks to you out there. And as always, Geoff, thanks to you, my friend.
Thanks, guys.